screen and I've logged into the ZagTrader platform. And I think the first thing I'd like to do is just show you where you can find the Recognia tools. And you can find them under the Research tab. So if I click on Research, you can see a new set of tabs opens up, and I can click on any one of the Recognia tools that's available: Technical Insight, Value Analyzer, Strategy Builder, our Technical Event Screener, or our Value Screener. And of course, the other place you can find us is if you have a portfolio in ZagTrader, you can actually look at your portfolio, and next to any one of your positions, if you were to actually click on one of those positions and actually bring up a chart for that particular stock, you can actually click on the tab that says Technicals, and this would actually bring up our technical analysis against that particular stock. So for the bulk of the time in today's webinar, what I wanted to do was focus on showing you some of the new features that have come out in Technical Insight over the last 12 months or so. Technical Insight is Recognia's tool for doing automated technical analysis and chart pattern recognition. This is our flagship product that's been in the market since 2002. And in the last 12 months, we've completed a complete redesign of Technical Insight, bringing it up to the latest web design standards using HTML5 and responsive design and accessibility and all those sorts of things. So has a very, very nice clean user interface. And here I've actually brought up the Technical Insight product inside of the ZagTrader platform. And a trader can use Technical Insight to do a number of different things. So they can use it to get a new trade idea, look at what's poised to move in the market based on technical analysis, or they can look up the perspective of any given stock worldwide and see what's happening, what's driving the price action of that stock or ETF based on technical analysis. And of course, they can also monitor their positions and stay on top of them using our Alert Center. So I'll kind of walk you through those three different use cases for Technical Insight. And let's begin with the one around, we already have an idea, for example, and maybe we've been looking at getting into MR properties, for example, with stock trading in Dubai. So I can actually type the name or the symbol of that particular stock, and we'll suggest a number of ideas here. So the very first one on our suggested list is MR properties on the Dubai financial market. So I can click on that. And the way that Technical Insight works is we bring in the market data from the world's exchanges after they close at the end of the day. We run our analysis in the evening local time. And basically we look for over 60 different kinds of technical events. And technical events are things that would be of interest to a technical trader. So price crossing the moving average, for example, is a technical event, or MACD crossing the signal line is a technical event, or the formation of a head and shoulders bottom would be a technical event. So Technical Insight finds those kind of events automatically on basically every single stock and ETF in the world, and does that on a daily basis. It can help you to understand, what's driving the price action of a particular security. So here's our perspective on MR properties. We start off by showing you a 2-year price history, and you can see that the stock has actually, had a local high in roughly September of 2017, has been declining ever since. And notice that on the price chart, we have these red squares and these green dots. And what those red squares and green dots represent are the dates that we had bullish or bearish technical events. So the red squares are the bearish events. And notice that the decline here was preceded by a number of bearish technical events. And the green dots are the bullish ones. So more recently, you can kind of see this cluster of bullish events that's occurred quite recently on this particular stock. And this is what is called the summary view. So we basically give you events that are playing out in 3 different time horizons. So we have the short-term events that'll play out in the next 2 to 6 weeks, the intermediate term events that'll play out in 6 weeks to 9 months, and the long-term events that'll play out in 9 months or more. And these time horizons just come from Charles Dow and his Dow theory of technical analysis. So if we're interested in just a short-term trade, for example, we might just tend to look at just the short-term perspective. You can see here, we'll zoom in and show you a 3-month price chart. And again, what you notice here is we had a low back in September 18th. Stock has been more or less rising since then. And you can see there's been a whole series of these green dots more recently. And if I look at the list on the right-hand side, this is all the currently active technical events organized from newest at the top and older as you move your way down the list. So you can see certainly there's been a cluster of bullish events. In particular, since October 2nd, we had 5 different technical events that were all bullish in this time horizon. If I was looking at perhaps a longer term history, I could look at the intermediate term, and I only have one event in that time horizon, a bearish price crossing the 50-day moving average. Or the long term, we have 2 bearish events. So this stock is actually looking kind of bearish in the intermediate and long term, but more bullish in the short term. So we may actually be seeing a reversal in the price of this stock, and it may be poised to move higher over the coming weeks and months. Let's try another example, and I think it might be interesting to look at. I know that crypto trading is of interest to a lot of ZagTrader's clients, so let's take a look at some of the crypto that's covered in technical insights. So maybe this most common one would be Bitcoin versus US dollar. So I can just type BTCUSD. Here's our analysis of Bitcoin. And again, you can see here's that big spike we had in January of December and January of this year. So the crypto cross actually hit a high of roughly 19,000, has declined more or less ever since, and it's kind of moved in a range over the last few months, moving sideways in the sort of 6,000 to 8,000 US dollar range. Now it's interesting to note that I'm going to actually just zoom in a little bit on this price chart, but notice that we've had a number of bullish technical events, and some of these technical events have a little triangle inside them, like this one here, or more recently this one here. So why do those have a triangle? Well, those are special events. In fact, events that have a triangle inside them are what are called classic patterns. It's one of the three types of technical events detected in, three classes of technical events detected in technical insight. And why classic patterns are brought out separately is because they can give us target prices based on the principles of technical analysis. So notice that for the Bitcoin to US dollar cross, we've had a number of different classic patterns over the last few weeks. We had a bottom triangle on October the 5th, and another bottom triangle on the 27th of September. And if I click on any one of those, for example, we can actually draw that triangle pattern on our price chart. So here you can see the price has been in a decline over a number of weeks and months, hitting a low of around 5,800. Back in June. The price kind of then oscillated between an upper level of resistance and a lower level of support, forming this triangle shape. And right here on the 5th of October is where we broke out above the top level of that triangle. And in technical analysis, that is a bullish event. It suggests that the previous downtrend is going to reverse. So this particular bottom triangle suggests an upward target for this of the Bitcoin US dollar cross of 89.63 to 94.99. Up from the closing price of 65.67, and we think that's going to take around 70 days to take effect. So this particular pattern would suggest a reversal in the price of Bitcoin. So let's take a look at another stock, and what's certainly interesting this week is some of the U.S. technology stocks, because there's been a bit of a meltdown in the U.S. markets this week. So people who are perhaps holding a position in some of these technology stocks or looking to get into a position may be interested. So I'm going to look at Apple, probably one of the most well-known stocks in the U.S. technology sector. And if we look at Apple, again, it's been a pretty bullish perspective over the last, many years, in fact, for Apple. Been moving up since 2016 here. Here you can see back in April of this year, we had a pattern, in this case, a continuation diamond. This is a continuation pattern suggesting the price is going to rise from the closing price of 173 into the range of 203 to 209. So that's kind of up here. So we did hit that target price. I'll take that one off. And then more recently, though, if we zoom in a little bit here, you can see that we've had a whole series of bearish events recently. So in fact, October 10th was yesterday. So we've had since yesterday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different bearish technical events in a row. The last bullish event was October 1st. And one of those events was this one here, a head and shoulders top, sort of one of the best known classic chart patterns. So this particular pattern suggests that that upward rise is about to reverse. That occurred when the price was at 217 and suggested a target price of 203 to 206. The last closing price, this was yesterday's close, was 216 to 236. These prices are updated intraday, but the markets are not open in the US right now, so we see the closing price from yesterday. So we actually are expecting the price of Apple to fall, from 216 down to around 203 over the coming month or so. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention to you is we can also help you in technical insight with some other things, like understanding support and resistance levels. So I'm going to just make this, bring that out a little bit. And there's a pattern in a bit more detail. I'll zoom in on it a bit. But you can also see down here, we have a card that tells us something about support and resistance levels. So if you're going to place an order for Apple today, based on the recent weakness, you might want to know where the next level of support is found. So technical insight can help you with those kind of calculations. So if I click on the support card, we'll bring up a little panel here on the right-hand side, and we can show you where support and resistance is found. We can actually draw them on the chart. So the blue line here, that's the next support level. and the green line is the resistance level, and then this blue chevron here at 216, that is where the stock currently closed. So we're quite close to that next resistance level of 226, but the next support is quite far away, down at 175. Now this has been calculated looking at the last 500 bars of price history, so a very long-term view. I could update that to a shorter term view, bringing into account more what's happened in the last month or so. Maybe I can base that on the last 20 bars, for example. And when I do that, you can see that we have support now at 215, which is very, very close to where the stock is actually trading right now. So we're very close to that support level. So if you're thinking of, entering a position for Apple today based on the recent weakness, support is found very close to probably where you're going to get your order in, which is an encouraging sign. The other thing we can help you with is the idea of stops. So stops are a good practice for many traders, and we can actually help you with a suggested stop level. I'll just take those support and resistance levels off, but I'll go back to stops. And what stops basically allow you to do is think about, if you're going to get into Apple, where would I want to place a protective stop to protect myself just in case the price doesn't rise, and in fact it actually happens to fall. I want to have a stop loss order in place that can make sure that I protect my capital on the downside. And we can help you calculate stops either the old-fashioned way, which is the percentage trailing stop. So if you wanted to know how to stop, say 8% below the current price, we could suggest what that would be for you. Or we also have a type of stop known as the Recognia trailing stops. And these are kind of more sophisticated stops because they are volatility adjusted. So we'll look at a long price history of the security and then suggest a stop level for you, which is a reasonable distance away from the current price based on the historic volatility. So here we're saying for Apple, our medium stop level would suggest a stop at $200.86, again, which is about $16 below the current price. And these stops can be tight, medium, or loose depending on your trading horizon and your risk tolerance. I'll also mention that I kind of showed you the charting here a little bit, but this charting is fully customizable. Here we're looking at all events, but I could customize it to look at just daily events or just weekly events. And if I wanted to, for example, change the charting from price bars to say candlesticks, I could do that. So now if I zoom in, you'll see we have candlesticks. And if I happen to like, for example, a mountain chart instead, we can change that as well. And these settings are remembered for you from one session to the next. So there's no need to customize them every time. If you can make that change once, it'll be remembered for you every time you come back and use our tools. And again, we also have another view here called the tile view. So here we're showing you a long-term price history with the different technical events shown as red dots and green squares. But sometimes traders are just more visually oriented. They want to see individual charts of those events. So if you click on the tile view, we can show you the sort of thumbnail chart of each one of these events. And you can actually go about that and do some further investigation based on this view. So that's a little bit about sort of how you can leverage technical insight to find to validate that perspective of an idea you already have. And we can come back to this in a little bit, but I'd also like to introduce you to something called the featured ideas. And featured ideas is found right here in the top right. Notice there's a link to the overview page of technical insight or to the featured ideas. And featured ideas is really an idea generation hub for traders. And the idea is that we're going to help you to find some trade ideas based on what technical events are currently moving the market. So every day we're going to provide you with a list of 10 trade ideas, and here they are in this ribbon across the top. The 5 green ones are the bullish ideas, and the 5 red ones are the bearish ideas. And I can basically scroll through here. So here, my very first one is a bullish event on MR Malls, stock trading on the Dubai financial markets. And this is bullish because it's had a bullish short-term pattern called a gravestone, a bullish gravestone. And notice if I don't know what a gravestone pattern is, I can hover my mouse over here and I can get some more educational content on gravestones. And we can actually see the pattern highlighted down here. So that particular candlestick there with the red box around it, that is the gravestone that suggests the price is actually going to rise from the current level of 1.84. Moving across the other ideas, you can see here's another idea on Consolidated Communications Holding. This is a NASDAQ stock, and this has had a pattern called a bottom triangle. You can see it clearly indicated here on the price chart, and I can hover my mouse over here and see the pattern in more detail. And notice that this pattern has a kind of a green box on the price chart. And that green box is what is known as the target price region. This is the target price suggested by this classic pattern. Remember, we talked about how classic patterns can suggest a target price. So the target price is shown right here. It's $15.40 to $15.80. The current price is this orange chevron, $13.53. And the target is this dark green region of the target price region. So this is where this pattern suggests the price is going to go. So we're going to rise from 13.53 into this dark green region. If we're to actually hit our target, that would represent a 15% increase from the confirmation price. So it's very easy to see, kind of your risk reward by looking at this kind of thing and where the price is expected to go. By the way, the width of this green rectangle gives you an idea of roughly how long we think it will take to reach the target price. So it's very visual in terms of what you think is going to happen and how long we think it will take to get there. And these things all just come from the principles of technical analysis. Looking through some other ideas, ICF International is another idea, Independent Bank Corp, Sprouts Farmers Market. I'm trying to find an interesting one here. Well, here's a good one actually. So this is a stock on the London Stock Exchange, Computacenter PLC. Trades under the symbol CCC on the London Stock Exchange, and it closed most recently at 1192. And we've had a bearish pattern here called a head and shoulders top. So this is a textbook perfect head and shoulders top. This is what every technical trader would look for when they're looking at stocks that are poised to reverse. Stock has been in an uptrend since 2017, and we've formed this head and shoulders top over the preceding few weeks. And this was confirmed when the price was at let's see, what does it say? Well, recently confirmed, and anyway, the target price is 877 to 947, this dark red region down here. That's where the price suggests we're going to go. And again, we can look at a longer interactive version of this. So if we want to look at a more detailed view or a longer price history, we can do that. And if I didn't know something about Computacenter and what that company did, I can actually click on this little information icon, and this gives me some information about the company, what their business is, and so on, as well as the most recent fundamental data for the company as well. So it's really kind of a one-stop shop for looking for trade ideas. Now, I could actually decide I want to go ahead and trade this today, and I could certainly do that through the ZagTrader platform, or maybe I'd want to watch and see if this downward trend that I've expected to happen in Computacenter actually takes place. And the way I could do that is by putting this stock on my watch list. So I'm going to click on watch, and notice that this little button changes from watch to watching. And this is now on my watch list. And this little star here tells me how many stocks are currently on my watch list. And I can toggle between today's featured ideas and my watch stocks just by using this little pull down. So notice here I have Computacenter on my watch list, and I can come back and revisit that on a daily basis and kind of see how the stock is doing, working its way towards that target price. Now, one of the questions many of you may have is, why did we suggest these 10 stocks out of all the stocks in the world? Why these 10? Well, there's something called the custom settings, which will allow you to tell the featured ideas something about what it is you're looking for. So for example, you can say what exchanges you'd like to get your ideas from. So here I've selected the 2 exchanges in the UAE, Abu Dhabi and Dubai financial market, as well as the London Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. Maybe I could add another US exchange. Maybe I'll add the New York Stock Exchange as well. And I'm looking for stocks perhaps, and I'm looking for both bullish and bearish ideas. But maybe right now I'm very bullish on the markets. Things have sold off pretty strongly, at least in the US over the last week or so. So maybe I'm really bullish at this point. So I just want to look for bullish ideas. And I can say something about my holding time frame. So am I looking for an idea that'll play out in the next 2 to 6 weeks? Maybe up to 9 months or up to 2 years. So if I want a short-term trade, I might just select that very first one, or if I'm looking for something a little bit longer term, I could have other ones. I'm going to say I just want the short and intermediate term trends. And then last, you can say something about your research preferences. Are you looking for stocks picked because they have great fundamentals, things like earnings and revenue and dividends and so on, or picked more based on their technicals, things like Bollinger Bands or MACD or stochastics. And we can also say what sectors of the market we care about. So here's the 11 sectors of the market, and we can say we either like them all, or maybe I don't really like utilities right now, and I don't like healthcare, let's say. So those ones I don't want to include in my featured ideas. So I can select those, and then you'll see we'll recustomize the featured ideas ribbon to give you ideas based on what you've told us in the custom settings. So MR Malls is still there as one of our ideas, but you can see we have some other ones here. So Rio Tinto stock on the London Stock Exchange. This is a Anglo-Australian mining company, and it's actually had a bullish continuation wedge, suggesting an upside target of plus 22%. And so on. So you can get some other ideas using the featured ideas. And I'll also mention that this is what's called a fully responsive application. So you can actually get these ideas on your mobile phone just as well. And if you want to get these ideas on your mobile, what you can do is use this link that says copy mobile link to clipboard. So I can click on that and we'll create for you this very special URL, which you can then copy and then send to yourself on your iPhone or your Android phone and open that up in a browser. And then you can either create a home screen icon or create a bookmark and so on. And that'll basically give you access to the featured ideas on your mobile phone. And as you'll see, it works very, very nicely on your mobile phone. It adapts to the size of the mobile screen. It's what's called a responsive application. And basically, you'll have just this window presented in a browser on your mobile app. So you can actually be reviewing some trade ideas for the day before you arrive in the office. And that'll give you a chance to kind of get ahead of the markets and be ready to make some trades when the markets open. So that's a little bit about the featured ideas. And I'll mention one last thing is we also have a very powerful alert center in Technical Insights. So let's suppose you've now taken a position, you bought a stock and you want to stay on top of it. You know, the way you can do that is you can actually say, I want to create an alert for a symbol. So you can say, what is that symbol I'm interested in? Well, maybe it was Netflix is the stock I'm interested in keeping an eye on. So I can actually create an alert from any one of the technical event lookup pages using this little bell icon on any one of the lookup pages. So clicking that bell will allow me to create an alert on Netflix. And those alerts can be one of two types. It can be a technical event alert. So tell me when some technical event is occurring on the price action of Netflix. I can look for bullish events or bearish events or what have you. Or I can create price alerts, which will tell me when the price of Netflix has crossed a significant level, be it a support or resistance level or a stop level and so on. So we can actually create those two different kinds of alerts. Alerts can also be created based on a screen. So if we look at what's called the technical screener, which I didn't mention yet, I'll go back to the technical screener here. Go back to research and then technical screener. What we can actually do here is screen for ideas. And I can say I can pick the market that I'm interested in. Let's suppose I'm interested in markets in the UAE, for example, the Dubai financial market. And I'm interested in any industry and I'm looking for bullish opportunities. And maybe I'm looking for primarily large cap stocks. So I can actually click this little filter here and add some other criteria, like I want to be interested in primarily large cap stocks. And I could also say a little bit about, for example, what kinds of events I'm looking for and so on. Click apply, and this will give me a list of stocks that actually have technical events matching the criteria that I've set up. So notice Emirates, NBD is one of them. It's had a technical event where the price has crossed the 50-day moving average. MR Malls, we already had a look at. It had a recent gravestone pattern. It's also had a price crossing the 21-day moving average event and so on. And we also had looked at MR Properties. The price has crossed the 21-day moving average there as well. So lots of ideas here. Now, if I wanted to automate this and actually have these ideas sent to me every day as an alert, I can just click on this subscribe button, and that will allow me to create a new alert. I'll call it DFM Opportunities and click OK. And essentially that creates a new alert for me. So every night when the markets are closed, we will run our analysis. And if we happen to find ideas in the Dubai financial market that match these criteria we've set up, we'll actually send you an email and it'll actually be waiting for you in your inbox in the morning when you wake up. So you're poised to have some trade ideas before the market opens the next morning. So the Alert Center is a very, very powerful piece of technical insight. And the last thing I'll mention is a little bit about the education. So we also try to educate our account holders as well. So we have an education section for technical insight. So I've talked about a lot of different kinds of technical events so far. If you wanted to learn more about any one of these kinds of events, be they the classic patterns or short-term patterns or indicators or oscillators, we have built-in education to teach you about these events. So if I wanted to learn more about, for example, a bottom triangle, I can just click on bottom triangle, and here you'll see, we'll give you a description, we'll show you what it looks like. We can tell you a little bit about the important characteristics of a bottom triangle, how you would trade this particular pattern, and so on. So lots of built-in education that you can leverage to become a better technical trader. So that's a little bit about Technical Insight, which, as I mentioned, has been completely redesigned in the last year. I thought, given the opportunity to speak to you about Recognia, I'd also talk briefly about these other two products that are available to ZagTrader account holders. We have Value Analyzer and Strategy Builder. And I'm going to start with Value Analyzer, and I think it's a very nice complement to Technical Insight. So whereas Technical Insight is all about technical analysis, Value Analyzer is really all about fundamental analysis. And there's some upcoming changes to this product coming as well. So what this really allows you to do is understand whether a particular stock matches the principles of value investing. And value investing is a very popular form of investment management, popularized by people like Benjamin Graham and Warren Buffett and Peter Lynch and so on. And although it's not complicated, to do a proper analysis of a company requires many different disparate pieces of fundamental data, and it's often hard to pull together in one place. Value Analyzer makes that process very, very easy. So you can judge whether a particular company would be a good one from the perspective of value investing, just based on looking at some of the charts that Value Analyzer can give you. And I'm going to start off by giving you an example. So we already looked at MR Properties earlier in Technical Insight. I'm going to look at the same stock in Value Analyzer and get a sense of how does this company match the principles of value investing. So let's begin. We can see, well, here we have a summary. So MR Properties, the last trade was at $5. And here's a summary of the company's fundamental data. So the revenue is 18 billion. EPS growth rate is 20.7%. Current PE ratio is very low at 5.18. And there's a dividend yield of 2.8% and so on. And you can see we lay out a whole bunch of different charts for you to take a look at. And these basically tell you what you need to know to see whether this particular company matches the principles of value investing. So what do value investors care about? Well, first and foremost, they care about, does the company have a track record of making money and generating earnings? So what we just show you here is a 10-year history of revenue and earnings for this company. And we can see that MR Properties basically has it's had a good track record of growing revenues. They've made money every year for those last 10 years. They had a little hiccup here, looks like in about 2011, maybe the revenue fell a little bit, but it's been growing quite nicely since then. And since that same period of time, they've been growing their earnings very nicely over the last, looks like about 7 years or so. So we want to find companies that have nice strong slopes from the bottom left of this chart to the top right. And notice that this chart is plotted on a log scale, so it doesn't matter what the numbers are, but what we're looking for is nice, straight, consistent lines from the bottom left to the top right. So on a log scale, a company that's growing its earnings at a continuous annual growth rate will be a straight line. So straight lines are very good in this particular chart. So EPS looks very, very nice. And in fact, these three dotted lines are to give you a sense of how fast the earnings or revenue is growing. So these three dotted lines represent the slopes of a company growing at 10, 20, and 30% per year. So here you can see that since 2011, MR Properties has grown its earnings per share at a rate well above 10% per year. And in fact, we even calculate that for you up here. We said it's actually growing its EPS at 20.7%. So that's a very strong EPS growth rate. Next, we want to look at things like cash on hand. Is the company fiscally healthy? Does it have cash that could survive a downtrend in the market or a recession or something like that? Well, yes, MR Properties has over 20 billion of cash on hand, which is good. Also, value investors like the idea of being paid a dividend. Does the company pay us to wait while our investments appreciate? So MR Properties does pay a dividend. Its current dividend yield is 2.8%, and kind of looks like it paid some kind of a special dividend here in 2014, but currently has a dividend yield of 2.8%. We also want to look at shares outstanding. So sometimes companies tend to finance their operations by continuously issuing new shares. Now, MR Properties seems to have done a share offering in 2014, so they've increased the number of shares outstanding then, but it's been pretty steady since 2014, which is good. And last, we want to keep an eye on debt to equity ratio. We don't want companies that take on a lot of debt because debt can be a drag on earnings. And I'm also going to draw your attention to this chart on the top right. This is called the value chart. What this does really is give us a sense of where is this stock trading today compared to its fair value. So here we have a 10-year history of price, and these purple candles you see here, these are one-year price candles. So these represent the high and the low of the stock in a given year. And you can see for the 2018 year, we have a little sort of hash mark across the 2018 candle. That shows us the last price. So MR Properties is trading very close to the bottom of its 2018 price range right now. Now the green line is what we calculate as the fair value line. So we're using a particular methodology developed by Peter Lynch. Peter Lynch said that a stock was fairly valued when its price to earnings ratio equaled its long-term historic EPS growth rate. Well, we calculate the long-term EPS growth rate, it's 20.7%, and we know the earnings, so we can solve that equation for price and give us this green line. Both historic, where it's solid, and then where it becomes dashed, it's projected based on the current EPS growth rate. So the idea would be that if the price is right on that green line, the stock is fairly valued. If the stock is above the green line, it's overvalued. And if it's below the green line, it's undervalued. So right now we're trading well below that green line. So according to the principles of value investing, we believe that this particular stock is looking undervalued. So it gets the green traffic light. Incidentally, you can adjust some of the assumptions here. So we do a bit of a what if analysis. So this analysis is based on an assumption of an EPS growth rate of 20.7%, and that's based on what the company has been able to achieve historically. But I could certainly say, if we want to be conservative, let's suppose the market pulls back a little bit, and maybe MR Properties finds it difficult to grow at 20.7%, and they manage only to grow at 15% a year. Let's update the chart based on that new assumption. And even at that reduced assumption of 15% EPS growth, we still find ourselves quite significantly undervalued. In fact, we'd look at a fair value of around $12 or $13. So this one looks actually well under the fair value, even with a reduced assumption of growth. Let's try another company here. Maybe we'll try something like, let's pick a company in the US, because there's so many interesting things in the US right now with all the volatility going on right there. So let's take a look at Apple. And what's the story on Apple? So this is probably not a company many people think of as a value stock. Think of it more as kind of a technology, a growth company. But in many ways, Apple does match the principles of value investing. So first, let's look at Apple's history of revenue and earnings growth. So it's had a really solid track record of growing revenue pretty much every year. Had a little hiccup here in 2013 and another one kind of in 2016, it looks like. But generally, the EPS has grown at a pretty solid rate over the last 10 years. But one interesting thing about Apple is it's kind of a tale of two cities here, in the sense that the story before 2013 is quite different than the story after 2013. So notice the EPS and revenue growth rate was certainly much stronger before 2013 than it has been for the last 5 years. So it certainly seems like that earnings and revenue is flattening out a little bit for Apple. And in fact, we may expect that trend to continue in the coming years. So right now we have calculated the long-term EPS growth rate at 15%. And again, we can look at things like cash on hand. Apple has tons of cash. It pays a dividend, and in fact has been raising its dividend since 2012. The number of shares outstanding, look at this. Apple has actually taken over 1.5 billion shares out of circulation since 2012. There's 1.5 billion less shares of Apple out there now than there was in 2012. And that is actually good, because it concentrates the equity and concentrates the earnings in fewer and fewer hands. The debt to equity on the same time is rising. So in fact, it's still pretty reasonable, but around 0.8, and that's been going on since 2013. It's kind of interesting that as the shares have been going down, the debt has been going up. So it kind of gives you a sense of perhaps where some of that debt is going. And then if we look at the value chart right here, you can see that Apple is trading right at the very bottom of its 2018 trading range because of the big sell-off we've had over the last few days. And it's very close to that green line, but slightly above. And in fact, it's close enough that we say Apple is near its fair value, so it gets the yellow traffic light. So another interesting way of looking at some of these stocks. We do have a screener, by the way, that's available inside Value Analyzer as well. You can access it right here in the value screener. So if you're looking for a very particular set of value investing criteria in a particular market, you can use the value screener to come at that as well. And incidentally, you can actually link between the multiple products. So I'm looking at Apple and Value Analyzer here, but if I wanted to look at it in Technical Insight, I can just click on that event lookup button, and I can then contrast the value investing perspective with the technical perspective. And although Apple's looking pretty good from a Value Analyzer perspective, it's looking very bearish in Technical Insight. So I may actually want to wait a little bit and try and get a better price to get into Apple, so I can be poised for that continuing growth in revenue and earnings. So that's a little bit about Value Analyzer, and I'm going to finish off with a bit of a discussion about Strategy Builder. And I think this is a really, really interesting tool, and I'm going to launch Strategy Builder here. And I describe Strategy Builder as a tool for building and testing an investment strategy. So all of us have different things that are important to us as investors. So some people really value stocks that are growing rapidly, or some people more favor stocks that generate income. Other people are interested in stocks that are in sort of very hot sectors of the market. And all of us want things that are different. But what's important really is to have a strategy, because just trading based on your intuition is often not a way to succeed, because people have just so many biases that actually causes us to be unsuccessful as investors. So Strategy Builder can really help you to automate some of your investing decisions and make them based on data rather than your gut feelings. So the way that Strategy Builder works is you can create your own screen or strategy anytime by clicking on this, build your own strategy right here. And as I create many, many strategies, they'd be saved for me as across the top here as I come into the tool each day. Or I can leverage some of what are called the featured screens. And these are basically screens that have been created by experts. So we have a number of screens that are available here, and we can update these on a regular basis as well. And last, we have what are called the community screens. And these are screens created by other ZagTrader users. So here's someone's created a screen called UAE Value Investor. And you could basically leverage that work that's been done by another user. And that user, by the way, has chosen to share his work with the community of ZagTrader users in the community section. So to kind of show you what's possible, I like to try to go about building my own screen. So I'm going to say build my own. And then what I basically get is a screen that allows me to pick which exchange I want to screen on, and then a whole series of criteria that I can use to build my investment strategy. And I'm going to, for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to pick the UK. So I'm going to say that I'm looking for stocks on the London Stock Exchange. And what kind of strategy do I want to build? Well, I'm looking for kind of well-established large cap UK stocks. And I'm going to basically find market cap in this folder called Company Basics. And all the different criteria are stored in these folders. So, for example, there's a folder called Popular, which is the most popular screening criteria. So things like stock price or dividend yield or market cap and so on. We have some things related to analysts. Company Basics are things like revenue and sector and industry and stock price and so on. We have things related to debt, criteria related to dividends like dividend yield and dividend growth rate and so on. Things related to growth and earnings, so EPS growth rate, cash flow, revenue growth rates, and so on. There's some quantitative or trading perspectives, like things like price performance over the last 5 days or the last 4 weeks or the last 13 weeks and so on, or price performance year to date. Profitability, things like operating margins and return on equity and so on. And here's an interesting thing. So under the technicals folder, we have a whole series of different classes of technical events. So all those technical events that I showed you in Technical Insight, well, those are available as screening criteria inside Strategy Builder as well. So it's kind of interesting. You can build yourself a strategy that consists of fundamental criteria, trading criteria, and technical analysis criteria as well. And in the investment research world, that's called a multi-factor strategy. And until a few years ago, it was basically unheard of for retail investors to have access to multi-factor strategies. So Strategy Builder is a really interesting way of creating and using those kind of strategies. And then we have things like under the trading folder, we have things like percent change from 52-week high and volume and 10-day versus 90-day volume and so on. And last, valuation related criteria like price to earnings ratio, price to book ratio, and so on. So as I said, I want to build myself a UK strategy, and I want to look for well-established companies. So I'm going to say that I want to find companies that have a market cap of £1 billion or more. So I'm going to slide the top of my slider here to the maximum value, and I'm going to move this one to around £1 billion. So notice as I slide the slider that this little number updates, and it's at 1.09 billion. I'm going to make it 1 billion exactly. So matches here says 338. So that's telling me that in the UK market, in the London Stock Exchange, there's 338 companies that match this first criteria. So I've gone from the whole market, which is some 3,000 different stocks, and I've already scoped it down to 338 matches with market cap more than 1 billion. What else do I like? Well, I like stocks that pay a dividend. I want to get paid to wait while my investment appreciates. I'm going to look for stocks that pay me a dividend. And I want my dividend to say be like 2% or more. So I'm going to make that 2%. And I'll just make that, leave the top end at 11%. What else? I'm going to also look for companies that make money and have a track record of growing their earnings over the years. So I'm going to go to the folder called Growth and Earnings. And I'm going to pick 5-year historical EPS growth rate. So we're going to calculate the average annual growth rate over the last 5 years. And I'm going to say that I want a company that's making money and growing their earnings. So I want an EPS growth rate of 10% or more. In fact, I'm going to make it 10% exactly just by over-typing that. So notice that each one of these criteria has a number of matches against it. So the EPS growth one, for example, has 434 companies that match. Down at the bottom, the total is now 75. So the set of companies that match all 3 of these criteria is now down to 75. So you see how I'm rapidly bringing down the number of stocks in the market to something that I can actually work with. And I think the last one I'm going to pick a valuation related criteria. So I'm looking for companies that, even though the market's been moving up for quite a few years now, I want companies that have reasonable price to earnings ratios. So I'm going to say I want a PE ratio of say 30 or less. There should be a fair number of stocks that have that. Yeah, so I have 972. I'm now down to 73 companies in the UK market that match my particular strategy. If I scroll down, I'm under the result summary tab. And you can see here is my top 10 list of stocks in the UK matching this large cap screen that I've created. Number 1 is a company called British American Tobacco, very well-known international company, trades under the symbol BATS on the LSE. Persimmon PLC, Vodafone, another very well-known company. So you can see all of these match our criteria. And these are shown in ranked order. So in fact, BATS, British American Tobacco, ranks number 1. Well, why does it rank number 1? Well, I can click on View Why, and this will tell me why this particular stock ranked number 1 in my strategy. Well, British American Tobacco ranks number 1 because its market cap is £79.1 billion, which ranks at number 13 out of 338 companies. It pays a dividend yield of 5.7%, which is great. That's 187 out of 772. Has a 5-year EPS growth rate of 57%. That's annualized. Wow, that's amazing. And the PE ratio extremely low. So these are the reasons why British American Tobacco ranked number 1 on my list. And I can actually go to what's called the detailed results in this tab. And I can see here a list of all 73 companies that match my screen. And again, these are all shown in ranked order. And they're basically down here, and down in these columns, we actually have the different criteria that I've specified and where the company ranks against each one of those. And here I'm showing 25 per screen, so I got 3 screens, but I can scroll between those different screens. And if I wanted to, I could even export this list as a CSV file. So I can click on export, and this will actually bring up a CSV file for me where I can take this list of criteria out and I can do other things with it in a tool like Excel. Now, I also wanted to show you this tab called Performance. And I think what's interesting here is, we've created ourselves a strategy, and I like this strategy just because it's all the things that are important to me as an investor. But I really don't have any idea how well I would do if I was to actually invest using this strategy. And of course, we can't predict the future, but what we can certainly do is look at what's happened in the past. So what the Performance tab allows us to do is to look at how this particular strategy would have performed if we used it historically. So what I could do is I can click on the Calculate Performance tab. I'm going to give this this backtest a name, so it's my large cap UK. And we have a few different backtesting methods available here. We can backtest both long and short strategies. I'm going to pick just the simplest one, which is buy and hold for 3 months. I'm going to say Calculate Performance. So what we're going to do now is calculate the performance of this strategy. So we're basically going to go back in time 5 years from today. And on that day 5 years ago, we're going to buy a mock portfolio consisting of the top 10 matches to my strategy on that day 5 years ago. And we're basically going to then hold that portfolio for 1 quarter, so for 3 months, at which point we're going to rebalance. So some stocks will come out of that strategy, some new ones will come in, and we're going to follow that process 20 times over 5 years, hold 20 different mock portfolios. And the performance of those 20 portfolios is basically this red line I'm showing you here. This is how we would have done with those 20 different mock portfolios over the last 5 years. And this, by the way, includes dividends, but does not include the cost of trading. So this is telling me that I basically have an annualized return of 2.7%. And I'm going to basically benchmark that against an index. I'm going to pick a UK index like the FTSE 100. So now I've got the FTSE 100 drawn. It's the red line now. And I have my large cap UK strategy. It's the green line. And you can see that those two have been pretty closely correlated. And in fact, my annualized return is 2.7%, and the FTSE 100 has delivered 2.4% over the last 5 years. Neither one of those is very good. So I very slightly outperformed the index over 5 years, but not enough to get really very excited about. So one of the great things about Strategy Builder is it allows you now to come in and make changes, to try different things. So what I might try, for example, is, can I make this strategy better by bringing some technical analysis into it? So I might try to add a technical analysis criteria. So maybe we look for, stocks that have also had a bullish classic pattern. So to go into one of our mock portfolios, now we have to have an active classic pattern on that stock that's occurred in the recent past. So we now are down to only 13 stocks. I'm going to calculate that again. So I'm going to call this large cap UK with classic pattern. And again, I'll backtest. And this little bar here, you see, this is called the progress bar. This shows us the progress of our backtest. It's a fairly complicated calculation. Typically takes 15 or 20 seconds to complete one backtest. And by adding that bullish classic pattern, ooh, look at that. So notice that my performance now is quite a bit better than the FTSE 100. And in fact, my annualized return is now up to 6%. Versus being 2.7% before. So I've actually made quite a significant improvement. So note that we have 13 stocks that are matching. Notice on my backtest history right here, I have a little flat spot back in about the second quarter of 2014, it looks like. What is that little flat spot? Well, basically, that is a moment of time where when we ran our backtest and went to build our mock portfolio for that quarter, we could not find any stocks that matched our criteria. So the mock portfolio just held cash for that quarter. So that's why the flat spot, because the return on cash is 0. So you have to be careful using Strategy Builder not to make the strategy so precise that you have too few matches, because you tend to get these flat spots on your backtest, and you're not really getting the benefit of investing if you're holding cash over that historical period. Incidentally, down here, by the way, it says average number of results. So I have on average 7.2 stocks in my mock portfolios over that 5-year backtesting period. That earlier one that I backtested that didn't have the classic pattern had 10, because there was far more stocks to choose from. Maybe I'll try something else. Let's take that classic pattern out, and I'm going to try something different. So I have a criteria here called analysts. And under there, we have some data from a company called Columbine Capital. And Columbine is kind of one of the granddaddies of quantitative research worldwide. And what they do is they employ a proprietary quantitative ranking model, and they cover thousands and thousands of stocks around the world in many different markets. But they're not predicting whether stocks go up or down, but what they're trying to do is tell you which stocks will tend to outperform other stocks. So the whole market may go down, but the idea is that their first decile stocks should outperform the 10th decile stocks, whether the market goes up or down. So what I could do is say, perhaps I want to have only stocks that are ranked by Columbine to be in the top half of the market. So in other words, deciles 1 through 5. Notice that my number of matching stocks has dropped to 47. So let's try back testing with that and see what happens. So this is large cap UK with Columbine. And I'll say calculate performance. Let's just see how we do with those Columbine quant rankings as part of our criteria. Here's the progress bar, still showing me 0, but that should fill in just a second. Not sure why it's taking so long. Let's try that one more time. Let's go back and let's re-back test this again. Say calculate performance again. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. It shouldn't be that busy this time of the morning, but Backtesting is a shared resource in our system, so depending on who else is doing backtests and so on, it can sometimes take a few seconds. In any case, hopefully I've given you an idea of some of the things that are available to you in Strategy Builder and how you can actually use them. So the last thing I'd like to do is just show you that I can save this now. So I'm going to save my strategy, and I'm going to call this Large Cap UK Strategy. And I can also, if I want to, apply these things called tags. And tags are basically a tool to make it easy to find this strategy when you're looking for strategies of certain types. So I could, for example, put a tag called dividend yield on it, and I could put a tag called, what else can I put on here? Consistent EPS, because we're looking for long-term EPS growth. And then if I want, I can also click this button here and say, share this screen with other users. So this is basically me giving my permission for this strategy to go into the shared screens, the community screens. It's also possible to get alerts from Strategy Builder by clicking this button. Email me any changes to the top 10 matches every day or every week or every month. I'll say every month. What this will basically do is on a monthly basis, will output to me the results of my strategy and any changes from the last time that was done. So basically shows you what's changing. This can be used as a rebalancing reminder or basically a source of new trade ideas. So I'm going to say save new screen. Screen has been saved successfully. Now when I go back to my overview page, I'm going to number one have a save screen here, my large cap UK strategy that I've just made. And there is a little bell is shown here, so there's an alert set against that. And if I also look at the community screens, you can see that screen has also gone into the community, large cap UK with 47 matches. And it'll show the annualized return the next time a backtest is done, and that's done on a weekly basis. So, a very easy way to kind of automate some of your investment decision making and to, find stocks that match certain sets of both fundamental as well as technical criteria. So that brings us to the end of our hour, and hopefully I've given you a little bit of an overview of these three Recognia tools available inside the ZagTrader platform: Technical Insight, Value Analyzer, and Strategy Builder. And I hope you all give these a try and find them to be useful